Hi everybody. Well, this is day 2 of my series on feet balancing. Um, we could say all kinds of things about this photograph. We could talk about the rider. We could talk about the horse. We could talk about the bridle. We could talk about all sorts of things. And we can do that moving into the future. But when people ask me to go and evaluate a horse, they might talk about how pretty he is, how well broke he is, how much they love him, all that kind of stuff. But one of the first things I'll do is I'll take a look at that horse's feet, because without feet, doesn't matter how pretty, how talented, how whatever they are, they're not going to be anything but a pet if they don't have functioning feet. A pet or a nightmare, depending on how you look at it. Now, I'm just going to enlarge this because what I really want people to do, because this is April Johnson's mare, and that's Luna the rider. But this mare was an 8-year-old, had never been fit, had very limited rides on her until Luna came into her life in May of 2018. And so her farrier, although a very talented farrier, it could only do so much because the horse was sunk down, not carrying herself up at all, and was just distorting her feet here, there, and everywhere. And plus the other thing is the mare was a little tricky to work with. So you put those two things together and the farrier doesn't have much chance. So what I want to point out is I want you to have a look at this leg that's trying to come off the ground. I'm just going to scroll back out again so you can see the whole picture. So what's happening is, in order for the horse to bring this left front foot up off the ground, is she has to close that knee joint in order to get that foot to clear off the ground. And you can see that her heel is already not weight bearing, but her toe is still on the ground because the toe's too long. If you can say one thing about almost every horse, I don't care what continent they're on, I don't care what breed they are, you can almost always say their toe's too long, and they probably got toe flare and maybe quarter flare. You can almost say that straight across the board. So we have these things called secondary motion so that the horse can actually get the foot off the ground. Now, one of the things that I so often hear when I am listening to a dressage rider or a jumper rider instructing their student, they always want to have the rider drive the horse's hind end up underneath them. And you could see very quickly, if that horse took that hind leg and stepped forward with it, you'd be in a situation where she'd be pulling that shoe off. And that isn't because the horse is lazy or there's something wrong with the footing. That might be true, or other things. But that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is that horse can't get that foot off the ground. And that's her left front, which was her good foot. Okay, that was her best foot of all of them. It was the best shaped and the best conformed foot. So the other ones were really getting her into trouble. Now, what I have to do here is I have my other pictures queued up. And so, but I have to walk over to my keyboard and exit out of here. And then I can exit out of here. And if I did things just right, which I see I might not have. Ah, there we go. It did work. How about that? So now this, if I go up here, I can get this on the full screen. Okay, so this is where the mare was when I first started working with her. This was in the 4th month. This was April of 2018. I had moved, 2019. I moved to the property in December of 2018, and I couldn't do much with her because we had a cold winter. So I was feeding her. I showed you the picture yesterday, and that 30-minute video is now up on my YouTube channel, and all you have to do to get there is just put Sandy Diamond in the search bar, and my channel will come up. So I want to talk about confirmation, and I hear this all the time. People breed horses because they have the mare, they love the mare, or they have a mare and they love a stallion and they want to raise a baby, or maybe it's all wonderful on paper, and I've made that mistake too. And sometimes you make a mistake like that and you live with it for decades, for generations, grandchildren, great-grandchildren of those combinations, because you keep breeding them because they're talented, they're athletic, they're whatever. So anyway, what I want to point out here on this particular horse is that her conformation, there's a problem with it. And to understand that problem and the ramifications of it, you need to be able to have a marker. This is where the wings of her pelvis are. So I'm going to stand in front. No, it won't work. If you put your hands on your hips, okay, and you can feel your hip bones, that's her hip bone. That's the wings of her pelvis, okay? Now, where her lumbar vertebrae, which there are 7 of them, go into the joint going into the pelvic girdle, where that is, and that joint is the SI, the sacroiliac joint. That, in an ideal situation, regardless of the breed, it should be as directly across from this hip to the other hip as you'll never ever see it ahead. That's not anatomically possible. But this is where her SI joint is, okay, it's right there. And you can see how far out of line it is with the hip bones. See that? So that means that the horse is always going to have a problem getting the power from the bottom of her hind feet, where they are touching the ground, up through the joints, okay? There's always going to be a problem with that, because this joint, which is probably one of the most important joints in the horse, it's not in the best place. Now, having said that, what that does is it makes for a very long back, okay? Now, if you know that this is the truth about your horse, if you know that, and you take that into consideration for the designated task and what you want to do, at what level you want to do it, how you're going to train and condition, and how you're going to balance that horse's feet, and how you're going to have it saddle fitted. If you take all of that into consideration, you can get away with it. You can get away with that. But the horse is ultimately going to pay a price in soundness. So now we know the SI joint is in the wrong place. It should be forward, and you'll see this SI joint placement more times than you will having it up closer to where the ideal is. You'll see that a lot. So taking the feet, looking at that, looking at the position of the SI joint. And then another thing that's really important, and this mare has this in spades, is she doesn't have her chest bone, which is right there, that's coming through the bottom of the rib cage. Her sternum is not hung out there. And a lot of times with horses that don't have the best conformation, their sternum will be out here. You frequently see the sternum being pushed out there. And there's not a lot that a trainer can do about that. That automatically puts the horse on the forehand, especially because it's usually accompanied by the SI joint being too far back and the long back. So you want to pay attention. This mare has a beautiful chest on her. It's absolutely perfect. So if all other things are equal, then her front end can compensate for the problems back here. Now, going back to the feet, what also it happens in this picture is you can see where the toe flare is right there. I'm just going to change positions here and make sure I'm not blocking the camera. So you can see right here the toe flare right there, and that's her good foot. And at this point she was barefoot. And the reason she was barefoot is because well, first of all, we'd had all that snow. We'd had about 15 inches of snow on Vancouver Island, on the inside part of the island. Unheard of, but we had it. And so we pulled her shoes off so that she didn't have a wreck on slippery ice and snow and whatnot. So I knew that because the footing in the arena that I could work her in was very aggressive as far as wearing feet down. But her feet were not in the best of shape as far as length was concerned. She had all that length of toe, and so I was pretty comfortable working her on that aggressive footing, knowing that it was going to grind her feet and toes down, which it did. And when they were down, just at that point where before she got sore, but she was close, we had the farrier come and put shoes back on her. Now, I don't recommend that you go and do that. I did it because I knew I was pretty sure I could do it. And the farrier kind of rolled her eyes at me, and I said, well, I just saved you an awful lot of hard work. But she didn't take this down sufficiently in the last trim before the shoes went on. She did after the shoes went on that next time. She did. But you can see this is straight here, and then it comes out a little bit there, okay? You can see that. The other thing that you want to pay attention to is, and it's too bad, this is where this left boot is, right here. And if you take that line and draw it straight down, you can see that it's just in line, or maybe not even in line with the last weight bearing point of the foot. Now, whenever you have that condition, it means that whole body mass without a rider, without a saddle, without working, and that's added on top when you put all that stuff there. It means all this soft tissue here and all the stress on the back of the leg, the soft tissue, tendons, ligaments, and all that kind of thing, that is carrying all of this weight. And the horse is designed by Mother Nature, God got us all that is, to carry the bulk of their weight on those bones, not on the soft tissue. So when they're set up like this, they're open to two things. They're open to soft tissue injury, tendon, ligament, suspensory ligaments, that kind of thing. But the other thing is they're open to tripping on the toe and having rotational falls. And I've worked with a couple of horses that have had rotational falls. And to be honest with you, um, the second one, which was a big, powerful thoroughbred that had raced and was now being a 3-day event horse, he had a rotational fall over a picnic table in a cross country at a big 3-day, and he had a rotational fall. It didn't break his neck, but it severely damaged his vertebrae and his spinal column. And the young lady and her dad didn't realize that. They kept trying to ride the horse. I had a couple of their other horses in training, and they brought him to me, and he would bolt, and I'm pretty sure it was related to pain. And when he bolted, he couldn't see, and he ran straight into a solid wall. And it was at that point that he became deemed unsafe to ride, or even to actually be in a paddock, and he was euthanized. So I wanted to show you this so you can see the pros and cons. And honestly, when you go to buy a horse, make a purchase, or if you want to breed your mare to a stallion, or you want to have your stallion cover some mares, these are some of the pointers that you want to look at. I'm just going to exit out of this because I have one more picture that I want to share with you, and that is this one. Now, this was just before Luna started riding the mare. Cheeky says, I can add my 2 cents worth in here. Now, this shows you, and I can't say that I remember this exact occasion, but I do remember how she couldn't back up. She couldn't back up, and part of it is you can see how long the toes on that hind foot are, and you can also see how she's kind of crooked with that foot. But, and this foot wants to point to the right. Now, I was asking her to back up, and the reason that I was doing that, and I did a lot of that, because this is the mare that would come to you, and she wouldn't quit coming to you. So I did a lot of back up and sideways with this horse, which is what picked her top line up. Okay, now, what's happening here is she's taken that right front foot back a step, but she can't back up here. And when she did, she would drag her toes. And so this was just before Luna. This was in April. Luna started riding her in May of 2019, and we took those toes back even farther. I'm going to just show you this. If you look, instead of this being a straight line down to the toe, you can see it's got a little bulge on it. And those kind of bulges, and you can see it a little bit here too, and you can see the growth rings there. That's called toe flare. It's not, we're not talking about the length of the toe from the ground to the hairline. We're talking about the amount of wall that's on the surface of the foot. Okay, I'm not sure what time I'm at here. Doesn't matter, 18, 20 minutes, whatever it is. So I'm going to stop here so that it doesn't take 3 hours for it to download on YouTube. I hope this helps you folks, and I've got more to come. Thank you.